Ever since 2019, when Crossout Designator was released in the OCG, it's been a competitive mainstay in their format. Pretty much everyone plays Crossout Designator over there, and it's been that way for quite a while. Obviously, Crossout is very popular in combo decks in the OCG, but also mid-range decks play it, and even sometimes control decks play it. It is one of their most popular cards. So, for years now in the TCG, people have been asking Konami to add this card into the game, and to many players' surprise, they sort of snuck it into the 2021 Megaton. And people were immediately pretty happy about this, I think. Crossout Designator is very good against hand traps. People don't like hand traps. It's a way to deal with cards like Nibiru, for example. So a lot of people were very excited to pick up their playsets of this very powerful spell. Pre-sales, I think, were over $100 at the start, but it settled once the Megatons were released at around $90 to $100 a copy. But now, just a few weeks later, it's down to about $70 a copy. And this was pretty surprising because people have been asking for Crossout Designator for a long time, and now we finally have it, and we got it in a format where a lot of people were main decking 12 or 15 hand traps. So you'd think that Crossout would be a very good card in the current format, but so far it really hasn't been that great, and that's kind of why its price has dropped so much so fast. Now I still want to say here that I think Crossout is a very good card, and I think it will see competitive play at some point, maybe even in the near future, but at the moment it's not really doing a whole lot in the format. Now in 2021 it is a bit more difficult to gauge the popularity of a card because we don't have regionals and we don't have nearly as many YCSs as we used to, but still we can look at events like the PPG event that was ran a couple weeks ago. At that event, in the top 16 players, only one person main decked Crossout Designator and only two people side decked it, so it wasn't as popular as people expected it to be. Now you could bring up the argument that Crossout at that event was quite expensive. It was at that $100 price tag per copy, but still a ton of players in the top 16 played Forbidden Droplet either in their main or side deck. That card was way more popular than Crossout Designator, and that card's like over $100 a copy. So keep that in mind here. I don't think price was really a big factor. A lot of people that topped the event played cards that were more expensive than Crossout was at the time. I think there are three big reasons that Crossout Designator has failed so far in the TCG. Like I said, I still think this card is very good. I still think it will see play at some point, but there are three big reasons right now at least why people haven't really been playing Crossout Designator. First off, I think a lot of the combo decks can play through Nibiru, which is like the best target for Crossout Designator in the TCG. Most competitive combo decks these days are actually pretty good at playing through hand traps in terms of Veiler and Impermanence and Ash Blossom, and a lot of them can even play through cards like Nibiru by summoning Appaloosa or Borreload Savage Dragon. So I think it's good to keep in mind here that a lot of the good combo decks are capable of playing through hand traps, so they don't really care about Crossout Designator as much. Now there are a lot of less good combo-ish decks that can't play through Nibiru, decks like Bee Troopers and Salamangreats and Madolche to an extent, and in those decks I think Crossout is a very good card, but in a deck like Drytron, which is currently the most popular combo deck in the format, they can make cards like Appaloosa or Herald of Ultimateness or Perfection before you have a chance to Nibiru. Yeah, sometimes those cards come out after their 5th summon, but oftentimes the Drytron board before those cards isn't really worth using a Nibiru on. So Nibiru hasn't really been that good against Drytrons in the past, which means Drytrons don't really need to rely on a card like Crossout Designator to actually play through Nibiru. Oftentimes, combo decks like Drytron don't really want to play a ton of hand traps in their main deck anyway, so finding the space for 3 Crossout plus a a few one-of hand traps can be a bit difficult in some situations. Right now, Drytron I think would rather play a card like Triple Tactics Talent, which doesn't require you to play any blank cards like the hand traps required to play Crossout. So if the first problem is that the best combo deck doesn't really want to play Crossout Designator, the second problem is that a lot of players, like myself, have cut hand traps from their slower decks entirely. I talked about this a little while ago, but many trap decks right now, like Eldritch or Altergeist or Burning Abyss, don't play any hand traps in the main deck. Now, Altergeist players are probably still going to play Infinite Impermanence because the Faker Impermanence combo is so strong, but a lot of the other hand traps have been cut completely. Why bother playing hand traps if you think they're just going to get Crossout Designated? You might as well just play more board-breaking cards like Torrential or Needle Sealing. And a lot of people did that at the PPG, and a lot of people have been doing that since Crossout was released. I know personally in the trap decks that I've built, I've kind of gone away from hand traps besides the really obscure ones like Dimension Shifter. So for me at least, when I've been deck building with trap decks, I really haven't included a lot of hand traps because I'm just like, what's the point? Why would I play a hand trap if my opponent might be playing Crossout? I might as well just play more back row that can break boards going second. And it does help that right now we have a lot of mid-range decks in the format. Other than Drytron, there aren't really a lot of big combo decks at the moment. Now, maybe when Burst of Destiny releases, that'll change, but at the moment, it's mostly mid-range decks, so you're not really worried about your opponent comboing off unless they're playing Drytron. Now, notably, if more people take this route and stop playing hand traps in their main deck, people start cutting Crossout Designator, which means hand traps are now good again, which means Crossout Designator is better, so it's kind of a back and forth there. We've seen this in the past when Nibiru first released. A lot of people stopped playing combo decks right away, which made Nibiru worse, so once people started taking Nibiru out of their decks, combo decks got a lot better, and I think we might see a similar thing here with Crossout Designator. Maybe right now it's not as good because the most popular combo deck doesn't need it and the back row decks aren't playing hand traps, but maybe when hand traps become more popular because Crossout isn't popular, then Crossout can come back into the format. The third and final reason that I think Crossout isn't seeing as much play right now as people thought it would is that we don't have Maxx C in the TCG format, and this is a pretty big difference. Remember what I said about combo decks earlier? They're able to play through cards like Ash, Valor, and Impermanence. And while a card like Nibiru looks pretty appealing, a lot of the time combo decks are able to summon an Appaloosa or a Borreload Savage Dragon before you have a good opportunity to use Nibiru. But with a card like Maxx C, you can use it as early as you want. You don't have to wait for your opponent to summon 5 times. You can drop that Maxx C when they activate their very first special summoning effect. And a lot of the time that will pretty much stop a combo player's turn. So in the OCG, they really need Crossout Designator to stop a card like Maxx C. This is pretty much why I said earlier that Crossout is good in decks that can't play through Nibiru. Bee Trooper, Salamangrate, Madolche, stuff like that, those decks can't really make Appaloosa, they can't make Borreload Savage Dragon reliably before their 5th summon. So those decks really do like Crossout because then they have a way to play through Nibiru. And in the same way, in the OCG, every deck wants a way to play through Maxx C, and Maxx C is very popular, so that might be one of the reasons that Crossout is so good in their format versus our format. Despite these 3 big flaws, I still think it's a matter of when Crossout will see play in the TCG versus if it will see play in the TCG. The card is so strong, clearly people are buying it a lot, even at that $70 price tag. I mean, people were buying it at $100 a copy, and I think they're going to want to use it in their decks. Crossout seems like one of those cards where as soon as it starts seeing competitive play in a lot of different decks, it's going to once again shoot up to $100 a copy. I would not be surprised to see that happen. But for right now, the card really hasn't lived up to the hype, and that's why we've seen such a drastic drop in its price. And what's really crazy is that this price drop has already happened before the second wave of Megatins have been released. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but the Megatins were broken up into 2 waves, so a lot of of locals only got like half of the cases that they ordered, or maybe even less. So there are going to be a lot more crossouts in circulation in November, so I think that might drop the price even more, especially if it isn't seeing play. Now, Burst of Destiny is a big release that will probably change the format in more than one way, and maybe Crossout will be good after that set is released. But right now, at least, Crossout really hasn't lived up to the hype, and that's why we've seen such a drastic drop in its price. Anyway, that is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below. Are you playing Crossout Designator? What deck are you playing it in? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I'll see you later. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.